we'll call this meeting to order at 6:34, and the first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next up is agenda review. I don't have any adjustments unless Julie does or anyone else.
Chris, I have
there. So
Chris.
Yep.
I have an item. Maybe Julie or the administration is going to bring it up, but I was asked today about end of year activities. The people talking to me, I think, have children in Swanton, but I know they have an MVU. So I think it's more of a high school issue, like what's happening with graduation, what's happening with end of year. So if we have time tonight, or if, as I say, it may already be in the reports. It wasn't on the agenda when I looked at it a couple hours ago. And end of school year as it relates to activities with the pandemic.
That's more next week. We're finalizing some of those. The plans are being made now.
Okay.
I think we're going to talk about that in our admin team meeting tomorrow.
Okay.
We're meeting next week. We've been,
Right, so good. Okay, that's good because we're going week by week now with the change. Right? That's okay.
Well,
I'll just get back to them and just say it'll be on next week's agenda. Tune in.
Okay. And then next up is correspondence or public comments. I don't see any public, and I don't have any correspondence, so I believe we're all set there. And so we move right on to the consent agenda, and I would entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes of April 6th. Steve's the first. I don't have hardly anybody's video. My internet is terrible tonight. So Toby's the second. So we may have to, I don't know.
We can unmute and say our names when we make first and seconds, Chris, if that helps.
Yeah, we may have to tonight because right now I've got 2 videos out of everybody. So my internet, everybody upstairs shutting the internet off on their devices. Maybe it'll get better, but we'll see. Okay, so any discussion on the April 6th meeting minutes? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor of adopting the meeting minutes as written, raise your hand.
Aye.
I've got 9-0. Thank you. Let's see, moving on to presentations, and the first up for presentations is the elementary administration updates. And let's see. Yeshua, I guess we can go for, or is he? Nope, Yeshua's not here, so.
I'll give him a text.
Huh?
I'll text him. But
okay.
Go ahead.
Yep. So next up is Joyce.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So feels like a while since we've been here. I'm going to go back to March because I just want to mention we had parent conferences right after we had our last board meeting, and we had every student's parent came in for a conference. And I always just think that, you know, any year I just really appreciate everything that parents and teachers are doing, but you know, especially this year, I just feel like to get 100% of parents at conferences is just really appreciate the effort by parents and teachers. So that was really good. In April, early April, Cheryl Ostrander, I think Julie might have announced at the last meeting, because it was maybe the night before, that Cheryl Ostrander was going to be honored as the Vermont Outstanding Teacher Recognition Day for the elementary schools for MVSD. And I just wanted to mention a couple of things about that, especially because this year it was a virtual ceremony, which was definitely not the same thing and not as special as you kind of hope it would be for people getting those honors. I just wanted, just for people at home, because I know the boards got the report and saw the different things from the program about Cheryl and some of the quotes, but I do want to just read a couple of them because I think she deserves that. And I'm just going to pick a couple of them. One quote from a student: Miss O is a passionate teacher and does anything for her students. She teaches me so I learn better in ways I never knew. I know Miss O deserves this award. This one from a parent. I need my glasses now, Julie. We know firsthand of the continuous communication she's always provided, whether in person during school hours or by email after school, always going above and beyond to keep us informed, pulling out all the stops and making every effort that our child succeeds. When teachers, parents, and students work together as a team, it really is a success. Her passion and undeniable commitment to the students truly shines and has had an extremely positive impact on our child, and as he now knows, he can overcome challenges and succeed with hard work and dedication. We cannot thank her enough for her overwhelming patience, kindness, persistence, continuous support, and endless encouragement. And just one from a classroom teacher: having the opportunity to work with Cheryl has been the best professional development that I've ever had in my entire life. The conversations I've had with Cheryl have helped me to reflect on my practice in ways that have ultimately changed my teaching for the benefit of all of my students. So I just really want to say congratulations, Cheryl, again. She's been in Franklin, I think it's 5 years now, and just a really well-deserved honor. Other quick highlights. In April, we had our transition meetings with the 7th grade teachers, and that's always fun, but kind of sad to be sending the kids off. But it's really a great time to try to help the 7th grade teachers get to know the kids before they get them, and what have been successful strategies for the kids and what their strengths are, maybe some of their challenges. So we did spend part of a day in April doing that. We were thrilled to fill our guidance counselor position. We're sad that our guidance counselor, she and her husband are moving back to their home in Long Island, but we were very happy to find a wonderful replacement, and we're looking forward to her starting next year. She's already been up to Vermont a couple of times, and I'm going to get her back to school the next time to meet the rest of the staff and spend some time with us. Oh, okay, right. I want to go back to this. Right before vacation, there was another COVID case, and our 6th grade had to go remote the week before vacation. Unfortunately, their day to get tested would have been the Friday before vacation, so that meant they were out that week and then all of vacation. And they came back to school yesterday, and so thrilled to see them all. And then today they said, welcome back, and start SBAC testing with them today. So, but they were great, very good sports, and worked really hard today. Update on the facilities work from over vacation. I had mentioned some of the things that we hoped would happen, but we're going to depend on contractor and parts availability. But we're able to get quite a bit done. The air system updates were all done. You know, the new motors, the medical grade filters, all of that. The only thing left to be done is some balancing in the office, gym, and cafeteria areas. We could not get the kitchen booster done. They just could not get that in. So that'll happen in June. And what was the other thing? I'll go look at that. Oh, the fire alarm system. Oh, yeah. That they came over vacation, they brought some materials, and they were back at school today, and they're beginning all the work on that. And we are in the midst of, as Dawn was asking about, planning for the end of the year. And we'll be having a graduation meeting with parents of 6th graders, and just in the beginning of May next week, but May 12th, we'll have a meeting with the 6th grade parents. Hoping to have it look a little bit more like normal this year, and also planning for our summer programming. So I think that's it. Thanks.
Joyce? Joyce?
Go ahead,
Yes,
Don.
Don, I'm turning my mic back on, but my dogs are starting to bark. I shut them away and they don't like it.
Just a question.
Go ahead.
I know that your school has usually done a really fantastic job at Memorial Day. Is that going to do a comeback this year?
It's funny you asked that. I spent about an hour last week talking to Brenna Sturdivant, because Brenna kind of heads up and organizes the parade. And we spent quite a bit of time talking last week. The Franklin alumni met on Saturday, and they decided that they're just going to do a vehicle parade this year, like they did last year. So we won't be making up a day on Memorial Day this year. They're not going to have town hall presentations. They're not going to be able to, I don't think they're going to be able to have people on the green, maybe something videoed. So they're going to do a vehicle parade again this year. So a few of us will, do like we did last year and still have a float for the school. We're not riding in the back of the trailer this time, though. That got too crazy at 40 miles an hour in a trailer. But maybe in the back of the truck, that's it. So we were disappointed, but I think it's the same thing, kind of trying to, it's May 31st and whatever. So unfortunately, no.
Thank you, Joyce.
There'll be a parade, but not like usual yet. Looking forward to next year, though.
Hey, Joyce, this is Steve. Let me know. Maybe we can put something out there too. Have something else in the parade for DFA.
I think Brenna is the one. Yep, Brenna would be the one to contact, like anybody who wants to be in the parade. She would be the one to contact, and I think that they would love to have anything they can. It was, although it's not, what anybody wants, it still went really well last year, and there was pretty good participation, and along the route, various people along the route, and we might be able to publicize the route more this year too, so we get even more people out to see.
I'll check into that because I've dressed like a cow before.
So, you just have to have something to ride on.
We'll figure it out. If we can, we'll do it.
Yeah, that would be great. I'll email you, Steve, and get you Brenna's contact info.
Sure. Go for it.
I'm sure they would be glad to have, I'm sure they'd be glad to have everybody they can, because, they do the best they can, and again, it's one of those things under the circumstances, everybody's doing the best they can. And so.
Okay, cool.
Thank you, Joyce. Next up, we'll go with Dina.
The suspense kills us. We never know who's going next there. So a couple of things just within our report. This report, our teachers were great. They gave lots of good information about what was happening, which I always appreciate. Starting with facilities, one thing that is very exciting is that we are getting a new scoreboard for our gym. Ours hasn't worked for a long time, and it's one of those things that, as Laura knows, it's been in our 5-year plan, but it kind of keeps getting chopped off. This year we didn't need it as much as in the past, but that Greg uses it a lot during his PE classes, and when we host our home basketball games, it's really getting a lot of use. So Jason was excited to be able to do that. It's ordered and it's going in, so that's great. Gearing up for our summer work, as I'm sure you know, we're doing some more asbestos removal in the Babcock building, and we're going to try to finish all of the rehab in the greenhouse. So I'm really proud of Jason and his crew for just moving forward, and Laura's been great with that. Just, Jason really communicates with her as we're trying to move forward. So as summer is coming, we too are in communication with our summer school, our ESY, our Crossroads program, and our summer tutoring projects that are happening. That's massive this year, and everyone will be back in the building, which is totally awesome. but we're also trying to assign people different spaces where they can be. Working with Beth Ann has been very good, and Kathy Kneebone is phenomenal anyway. But we're just trying to find locations. Our custodial staff in the summer is awesome. They might start in one house, for example, Red House, get it all cleaned, and that's where we can hold our summer school programs, because those other houses are being torn apart or moved around. So Jason's incredible with that, making it work for his crew, but it takes a lot of detail and planning to do that. So we're moving into that. Dawn, I laugh because we too are working on our end of the year plans, and that took about 7.5 hours of my day today. And Julie was great with our conversations, and I think we're getting closer. So Julie, I thank you for that. It's really hard, as Joyce said, trying to return to something normal. And I try not to use that word normal, but just more familiar. There's still a lot of considerations, if you've ever been to a Swanton recognition night. Toby has been. That's when we get the most votes for air conditioning in our building, is on recognition night. People are crammed in there, and I personally, and I know a lot of people, are still a little nervous of 300 people kind of crammed in there. So we're doing the best we can. I think the alternative plans that we're coming up with are going to support all of our kids, and we're hopeful that that's going to be successful. One big thing, I think, too, with Memorial Day coming, I have to say our Unified Arts team, with the lead of Jenny Jacobson and Gianna Messier, they have been taking the lead in our Veterans Day and our Memorial Day celebrations over the last couple of years. They put together a beautiful virtual ceremony this year. We showed it at the same time in all of our classrooms, so it was kind of an assembly, but from far away. They're planning Memorial Day right now, and we're going to kind of have a plan A and a plan B. If it's possible to be outside, spread out, all of those things, we will. Otherwise, we will remember just virtually again. But I'm really, really thankful that they take the lead in that. The last thing is just one of the things from my report is just kudos to our partnership with NCSS. As I'm sure the board knows, we have a lot of contracts with them. The group that was really identified in this last report was the autism program. And we, last year, we had a pilot year where we have an autism specialist working with us on site. She kind of is belonging to us as part of our staff. And that was because of an influx in kindergarten last year. We had 4 students with autism who all required some intensive work and training with BIs or paraprofessionals. And then we had another student or 2 enroll kind of at the last minute. So as great as our special ed department is, no one had the capacity that we needed to support these kids and families coming in. We're learning along the way, but that has been a really powerful partnership. Another level of that is when we work with Shauna Shappy, who is in charge of the autism program. We also have a couple of autism BIs who work with kids one-on-one. And Sarah Stone wrote a beautiful tribute, I really think, to this young man who is new to our school this year in 3rd grade, and just the collaboration in honor of Autism Month and the goodies that this young man brought in. He was demonstrating with them and taking a lead on how to make oobleck. And I was in there at the time, and his classmates just think it is wonderful. Justina's daughter is in that classroom, and she has just shared some beautiful stories of Lucy's feeling towards this young man. And I get emotional thinking about it, and especially because Sarah is a veteran teacher in our school, and she's outstanding. But sometimes change or differences are a little harder for her. And she was just blown away by the support, and this child, I think, is blooming in her classroom. So it's just the money that our board supports in these partnerships. I just want you to know that teachers appreciate it, and there's lots of places where we couldn't do this on our own, especially in the area of autism, our mental health. So just a shout out to those partnerships, and the fact that Sarah was really okay with me sharing that made me feel good too. So that's really about it, except we're hiring season now, and I know Bonnie's going to go through that. So that's a full-time job in itself. So.
Thank you, Dina. Next up is Yeshua.
All right. Hello, everybody. First off, I'm very sorry I was late. I was literally sitting on the couch with my children, hanging out, and then Julie texted me reminding me I'm supposed to be somewhere. So I'm very much so sorry about that. So I definitely want to start out with a little fun story. It actually happened today, and I had a little note by my office from a second grade student named Lachlan. And Lachlan, sorry, not Laughlin. And it said he wanted me to know that Mrs. L, who is his teacher, said that they should get days off. And days off was all caps. And so I, at the end of the day before dismissal, decided I was going to go in and talk to the class and say, oh, what's going on? And I came in and said, what's this? And of course, the students were all excited and very passionate about, Miss L said we can have days off, so you have to give us days off. And I, of course, thought she was playing along right with me, how funny it was. Kids got a little riled up. It was right before dismissal. Okay, go home, be all crazy. And then come to find out, she had no idea he had written that note, and she didn't even know he was dropping it off. She thought he was going to the office to drop something else off. So I thought she played it well without realizing she had no idea. So that was certainly fun today. So just other updates for Highgate. We're definitely doing lots of planning for next year. As I'm sure, Joyce and Dina have shared, it's kind of crazy that we do a ton of planning this time of year for next year. SBAC testing starts next week. So that's, I know Joyce has already started, but ours is next week. We do have some VT/VLC students that are coming in for that as well. Just like Dina was saying, we have one classroom teacher that we're hiring for. And we're going to do interviews tomorrow and then Thursday morning, and then hopefully move someone forward. And I think we have some nice candidates, which was great. We certainly had more candidates than we did last year, which was really nice. We had to really vet through the candidates that we had, which is always great. I definitely want to say thank you to the Task Force Facility Group for officially approving the use of funds for our phone system replacement. If you don't know about the phones in Highgate, if they die, they can't be replaced. So it just means you have to get a new spot for your voicemail. So we're really excited that we're going to have all like that cable work done that was already planned. And then on top of it, we can have a new phone system. There's even times too where we have to call the company because it's staticky, or someone says they keep calling and it keeps getting dropped. So I think this is going to be wonderful with the cable work and the phone system being replaced. That'll be really, really, really good. Some of the stuff for next year, we've already completed our master schedule for next year. We're currently in the middle of our placement process, which, to place students in their next year's classes, which it's actually quite the process. There's quite a few steps we follow through to make sure we're creating balanced groups. So we are working after school at different grades almost every day to finalize the placement process. And we should have that done in the next couple of weeks. And then we'll focus on para placement and special ed placement, although special ed's mostly already decided how it's going to go for next year. We also are thinking about graduation. I'm sure, kind of like Dina said, it makes me a little nervous about the idea of people coming in and lots of them and having to regulate vaccine people and not vaccinated people. And we're definitely going to be meeting as well. I know that Joyce, Dina, and I meet every couple of weeks. This Monday, I definitely want to pick their brains about what they're doing. And then we are having a sixth grade family meeting on May 11th to kind of talk about what the plan will be. And of course, flexibility being key because it could always change depending on how things go. We also did have the week before break, we had a remote classroom, a first grade classroom. And it was a new to Highgate teacher, but brand new to teaching. And she did a very, very nice job, a really good job of communicating with families about what was going to happen. And luckily, Brandy Maskell had to go remote for 1 week, and she was very, very helpful and gave a lot of insight on how it was successful. So I think families, although it wasn't a great situation, they were pleased with how things occurred. So that was really good. And one thing I'm really excited about, and I know there are a few of us in here are on it, but the Portrait of a Graduate committee that we have for the district has been really great. And I think we've had some really nice student leaders from Highgate that I've just been really impressed by. And Terry and I happen to be in one of our smaller subgroups together. And the 6th grade student from Highgate, our group is focusing on community involvement and what groups of folks that we would like to get a voice to be a part of the process. And this student happens to be Abenaki, and that was really a focus he wanted to take on. So him and I have done that. And I've had great conversations with Jeff Benet and Brent Reeder, who is a Highgate community member, a parent, and an Abenaki. And he's been a fantastic resource and has given me a lot of good historical context onto how to kind of approach the tribal council and tribal leaders. So I'm really looking forward to that work. And I think we've just had really nice conversations because we're really thinking about how are we bringing MVSD together in our communities and our schools. And just that idea is exciting, but more importantly, the work that we're seeing with adults and the students is just amazing. I mean, the students are just one of the adults in these conversations. Like there's not this adults make decisions and kids follow. I mean, they're really a part of it. So it's been really awesome to see. And even by 11:45 on the Wednesday we meet, I have one 6th grader who's always there ready. He has his cold lunch, his headphones, his laptop. Sometimes he comes up early, but he's just ready to go. So it's been really exciting. And we actually meet tomorrow afternoon, which I can't be there because of interviews, but I know the rest of the Highgate leadership crew will represent us well. But other than that, things are kind of moving and grooving along, and it's been great coming back from break.
Thank you, Yeshua. Any questions for our principals? Terry.
I have a question. I'm not sure it should be talked about now or if it should be talked about when we get to more COVID and things like that. But I did notice in some of the reports talking about the people that have not, the students that haven't been at school this year coming back next year and what their plans are. And should we talk about that now or should we talk about that later? Would be my question. Also, Joshua, you're right. That kid is so cute. And it surprises me how at first I'm like, oh gosh, they're coming up with, we're going to listen to the kids and they're coming up with some of this weird stuff. But you know what? The more they learn to give input, the better they get. It's amazing. It's amazing to me to see. Anyway, okay, that was 2 things.
Terry, I don't know that we have a COVID update on the agenda, so I think it's appropriate to ask a question of principals or me. I mean, Chris, if you agree with that.
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm not sure who wants to take it. I know, Dina, when I was looking at yours, I saw that you had, made some calls, and I wondered what happened with that. They're coming back. Or...
Yeah, I can speak on behalf of Justina and myself, and I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but Swanton had a large number of kids not entering our building this year. I think with the other schools, I know it's smaller, but I think we have about 60 to 65 still in VTVLC. And then our home study kids, we always have a small handful, but I think we increased that by 10 to 15 again this year. So as we said at one other time, we're worried. We're not worried. We're trying to support a transition back. So Justina made this whole list, including all of our home study kids and our VTVLC kids. Chrissy was instrumental in that too, because we didn't add our home study, like permanent families that we know are making that choice permanently. Between Justina and I and our guidance team, we called each of those families for 2 specific reasons. One was what their intentions were next year, because we too in Swanton will be getting ready to do placement, and to find out if they were in fact coming back into the building. And then we talked about summer supports. There are kids, obviously, who were eligible for special ed or extended school year. All of our kids are eligible for tutoring through our tutoring program, and then taking part in Crossroads. So in working with our Crossroads team, we were able to send those flyers out early with that group of students to kind of give them a first chance. I don't have the numbers yet of how many are coming this summer, but the goal was to support them academically, but for many of them, just to get them back into the building, because we have some kids that we are worried about, that whether they're afraid or whether they haven't had as many demands or responsibilities placed on them. For some of these kiddos, coming back into a 7.5, 8-hour routine is going to be challenging. So we're trying to be prepared for that. I think, I don't even really want to say, but most of our kids are coming back. That's not a good number. I know there's one family that has 3 little boys that they were with us before, but they are home study this year, and she's going to continue with that. But there's other reasons too. It's not a COVID related thing. Most of the parents who were home study just to not be in the building, they are coming back. Our VTVLC kids will come back because there won't be an option for that. I'm sure Joyce and Yeshua, I mean, it took a lot of time, but I think for us as a school, that was really important to find out where people were at. Some are still very nervous, and there's a few that said they're not going to make a decision till August. So that was a long answer, but I think it was important after this kind of year.
No, that was really good. Thank you. I didn't want exacts, but just knowing that most of them are talking about that's helpful. I didn't even realize that the VT wasn't even an option next year, but I was wondering about that. Okay.
Yeah.
I think too, Dina, this is Steve. I think too, there's options out there for kids too. You get 8 to 10 in the morning, or 8 to noon, or 8 to 3. So I think that's a really big plus that you can work around it. And I mean, we're going to work with it. And it sounds like it's pretty full here in Highgate. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, we will have Beth Ann come in again when we have summer solidified, because we're really looking at connecting with partners. So there's the part that we control, but then also we want to make sure families have opportunities and connections to what rec departments are doing. We can't do it all, but we're stronger for our families if we can have more partnerships and really help families network with that. So we're pretty excited to be able to facilitate. For many kids, they haven't had a lot of social interactions. Most kids have, but there are a core group of students who have had fewer social interactions, and we want to make sure they have solid opportunities to sort of re-engage.
And the only thing I was going to add, because exactly what Dina said is pretty much what we're doing at Highgate as well. But we're really trying to encourage our VTVLC families not only to help transition back, but for us to really see where are they as they've progressed this year through VTVLC, because they do use different standards than we do. So I know we really want to get an understanding of a picture of how they've done. And I think for most of our VTC families, they've actually been pretty successful, but there is one that I don't think was very successful. So they're one that I'm highly encouraging that they come in before placement. Because I think as I said, we have to just get to know how things have gone for them. But I think Beth Ann's done a really nice job, and even in collaboration with Kosha and Wendy, about making a pretty robust summer program that seems pretty exciting. And kind of like you said, Steve, I think families are pretty interested in it. So I think we kind of, just like Dina said, we sent out information to those we really want to prioritize. And we've gotten a lot of interest, which is wonderful, because I think we have the opportunity to have a pretty good summer program. And I'm really looking forward to it.
Dawn, I saw your hand raised.
Dina, you mentioned families making a decision in August. Hopefully you don't have too many. And do you see it as a possibly creating a staffing issue? That's really my question.
No, it's a good question, and I don't, Dawn. There was maybe 2 or 3, and one person already made the decision to come back, so the numbers are not big. And what in my conversations I had, I'm going to tentatively place those kids anyway, because placing them after the fact, it's just like when we get new kids, it's always hard to do that. But no, it's probably less than a handful, but that's a really good consideration.
Good. Thank you.
Any more questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for the presentations. And we'll move on to our next presentation, which is the Recovery Plan Needs Assessment.
So I'm going to pull up a presentation that Kosha developed, and Laura worked with her on that as well, especially with the fiscal part of it. So let me get that going.
Thank you, Julie.
Kosha, you're going to have to give me the next slide because I won't be able to look at you while I
Yeah, definitely. So good evening, everyone. We wanted to give you an overview of our road to recovery, which is how we're going to be planning to recover from COVID. And as everybody said, try to get back to normal as much as we can. Julie, thank you. So as the recovery team started meeting, we really started thinking about the whole concept of recovery and then the concept of redesigning. We see this as an opportunity to really redesign our instruction rather than just recover from the pandemic. When we met for the first time, I asked people to think of a child that they knew in their life, could be a student, their own child, a relative's child, and think about what have the children actually learned this year through the pandemic. And people commented things like they've shown resilience, they've become more independent, they've definitely learned a lot of technology and using technology. A lot of them have developed empathy, just seeing what's happening all around the world. And they've also learned to be flexible because, as you heard, Yeshua and Dina and Joyce, there have been times where classes have had to go remote and kids have had to adjust to different kinds of instruction. So we want to really build our next 3 years of recovery on these strengths that our kids have shown this year, rather than just thinking of it as a deficit that, wow, there are these huge achievement gaps and we're just trying to fill them. We really want to build on our strengths. The key principles that we are going to be using as we think about recovery is equity, where each student receives the resources and the opportunities that they really need in order to learn and thrive. In terms of the duration, it's going to take a process. It's not going to happen overnight, probably around 3 years to really get back to where we were. We also want to really build on our community relationships. As you've heard, we want to reconnect with families who have not been in our buildings. We want children to reconnect with their own classroom community, and also, with the return of as much normalcy as possible, be able to sit next to their friends and to be able to talk to their friends and eat with their friends. So community is going to be one of our strong guiding principles. And then lastly, partnerships. The Agency of Ed is working with school districts and supervisory unions to help support the development of these plans, and also to be able to share some resources regionally. So if they see, for example, there are several school districts with similar needs, they are going to get us together to help do some of that planning together. This is our planning timeline. We've been given certain deadlines by the Agency of Ed that we have to meet. We had to get our recovery team together and submit that by March 15th. By April 15th, we had to do a needs assessment using a template that was provided by the Agency of Ed. That was submitted on April 15th, and we've already been approved for the initial needs assessment. Currently, the recovery team is working on our recovery plan, and that will be submitted. Well, we are hoping to have a draft ready by May 15th, which then we will have stakeholders give feedback on that initial draft. Stakeholders, we are including the school board, so we would like all the members of the board to be able to take a look at it and give us feedback on it. Jeff Benet is meeting with Abenaki students. He's meeting with the PAC and getting feedback from them. We have also been in touch with NCSS and our CASEL consultant, who will give us feedback on the social emotional part of the plan. And of course, our administrators are huge in this planning process. So every week we update the administrative team on what is happening as far as recovery planning, and they are communicating back to their leadership teams and staff so that everybody has input into what we are developing for MVSD. By June 1st, we will submit the plan to the state, and implementation will start right after that. So that is the timeline for the whole recovery planning process. Partnerships are going to be really important, and there are specific roles that people are going to play. As you all know, I'm the district recovery coordinator, and basically my job is really to work with the recovery team in the planning process and to also serve as the point of contact with the Agency of Ed. The recovery team is responsible for coordinating local and regional recovery efforts and to help with the whole planning. The state support team is going to be the liaison between us and other state agencies. They are also assisting us in terms of giving any technical assistance that we may require or request. And they would also be putting together some regional meetings. So if people have common dilemmas or problems or challenges, they can meet together and brainstorm together. So in terms of the roles and responsibilities, the district, as I said, will be creating this plan. We are also going to be looking at a district-wide educational support team, and how do we create a process that all our schools would follow as students are identified for supplemental needs. As part of, when I looked at this slide, I said, oh, a lot of jargon, EQS, Act 173. So the EQS is the Educational Quality Standards. And under Act 173, we are required to really dig deep into these 4 elements, educational support teams and how they function. How do we increase the efficiency with which students are receiving supports and we are responding to the interventions we put into place, looking at our curriculum and making sure we are coordinating it horizontally across grade levels, across schools, as well as vertically from pre-K through 12. Looking every year at our comprehensive assessment system and seeing what we can do to revise it, make it more efficient, and to be able to use that data effectively. And then, of course, professional development is a huge component. We've been conducting a self-assessment in each school building and have received a lot of really good information about what kind of professional development teachers are seeking, so that we can do some more choice-based professional development next year and for the next few years. The Agency of Ed has given us the timeline, the template. They've also created a toolkit for us. And as I mentioned, they are offering technical assistance. Every week on Wednesdays, they have meetings with all the school district members as well as supervisory unions where we can ask questions or ask for clarifications about things that we are not sure about. So that is going to continue till June. The three different pillars, as they are called by the Agency of Ed, are social emotional functioning, mental health and well-being. The second one is student re-engagement and attendance. And then the third one is academic achievement and success. Under these three pillars, we know that all three of these components are critically important for students to be successful. And so as we are planning, we are thinking about how do we support students' social emotional learning, mental health? How do we re-engage students who become disengaged? How do we increase attendance? And then what can we do to support students academically? What kind of professional development do we offer teachers? And rebuild all those academic standards as well as skills that students may have lost over the last 1 year. This flow chart actually shows you the whole process that we have to go through in order to create this recovery plan, which of course we prefer to call our redesign plan. So in February and April, during our half-day in-services, all the buildings, staff members and administrators worked really, really hard and collected a huge amount of data around all these three pillars: social emotional needs of students as well as adults, attendance, truancy issues, as well as academic needs. We collected all this data, the recovery team looked at all this data, and then have now identified what our top three priorities are under each of these three pillars. So we compiled the needs, submitted it, as I said, that was accepted by the Agency of Ed. And now we are in phase 2 of the recovery planning process, where at our recovery team meeting on Thursday, we will be examining feedback from each of our buildings in terms of, do the staff agree with these three priorities that we've identified? We will collect that information, we will come to consensus, and then move forward with what's in the blue box, which is the stage we are at, is okay, if these are three top priorities, what activities do we need in order to meet those priorities? And then finally figure out what are resources we need, what are people we need in terms of personnel. And then the final phase will be looking at any additional data that we may have collected after February. For example, we just compiled the Panorama survey data on adult social emotional learning. And we are going to look at that and see what the needs of all the adults in our district are, because we know that keeping their wellness in mind is going to help us with keeping our students well and available for learning. So this is the whole process, and the flow chart shows you the whole process and where we are at in it. And in the next few slides, Laura is going to be talking about how do we connect the ESSA funds that we've received with the recovery plan. So Laura, it's all yours.
Okay. I feel like I'm a bit out of my my bailiwick here, but basically what the next phase of the process is that we will need to take all of that recovery planning, tie it to very specific strategies that are outlined to us by the federal government and now the state, and then build a budget. And so that's kind of the next piece that we're working through. So what I've done here in this slide is outline the allowable uses of the ESSER funding, as we will have to tie them to these specific strategies. So all of the goals that we have will have to be then tied to these specific strategies and then reviewed by the AOE for appropriateness. As Kosha mentioned, we will then, after the investments have been made, need to compile data to prove that these were effective and positive strategies and investments. So I won't read these to you, but it does state that 20% of the funds need to address learning loss through the implementation of evidence-based interventions. The remaining can be used for a wide array of activities. Something that's different about the ESSER funding as opposed to the CRF funding that we've received so far is that it can be used to address needs arising from any activities authorized by IDIB, SEAA, Perkins, and so that was something that was new and not allowed in CRF. So we're actually allowed to subsidize those other programs with this funding. Public health protocols, preparedness and response efforts to state and local and tribal public health departments. Training and professional development is a big piece of this, as Coach has stated. Purchasing supplies and sanitation materials. It does have improving school facilities to reduce risk of exposure and improving air quality. But I do want to mention that the information we've received so far is that any facility related or construction related projects that we would be proposing to use ESSER funds to support we'll have about a 4-step approval process. It will be a rigorous approval process. The state is developing a team of people to work through that with us. So it would need to be a very thoughtful and planned out project. Next slide, Julie. Other than that, they do, again, talk about addressing the needs of children from low-income families of all different groups, developing and implementing procedures and systems to improve the preparedness and response efforts, activities for long-term closures. Hopefully we don't have to ever go back to that, but that is something that we will be planning for. Purchasing educational technology is another piece of this. That was part of ESSER. It continues to be part of CRF, excuse me, continues to be a big part of ESSER funding. Addressing learning loss, other activities necessary to maintain operation and continuity of service. So every single goal that we work through with the admin team as part of our recovery plan will need to be tied to one of these strategies, and that's why we're really showing that to you. So Coach, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say about this. I know you've touched on a lot of it already. I think the point was just to show that, you know, there is specific strategies that this has to be tied to. I think when we listen to the news, they talk about all the funding that is out there and all the wonderful things we should be doing to it, but there will be some accountability, obviously, and a huge amount of transparency that will be necessary.
Everything you said, Laura, sounds good.
Yeah. And then Julie, I did want to share the last slide just because I wanted to share the update to the ESSER 2 amount.
Oh, sorry. I thought that was the last slide.
That's okay. So I had shared with you the total amount of ESSER 1, 2, and 3 funding along with a timeline. That was just the last slide again. But I did want to let you know that we received a notification from the Agency of Ed last week that they had made a calculation error when they were calculating ESSER 2 amounts. So instead of 2.7 million in ESSER 2, we'll be getting approximately 3.5. So there were some winners and some losers. I'm glad we were a winner in that situation. And so, yeah, about $740,000 more than what we originally thought in ESSER 2 funding.
May I ask a question? Laura, who does this? Do you do all this?
No. No.
It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. We'll have about $12 million worth of extra funding coming in. So it's a complete, it's an effort with the entire administrative team, I would say. And I also have people on my business office side, Marnie Carlton, who's our grants coordinator. Coach works with her very closely. This will continue to be a team effort for the next 3 years. By no means is it me. I'm usually just the one standing there saying no or giving people a hard time.
No, I get it. I do the same thing at a lower level, really. But But no, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And Julie, I just wasn't sure if you still wanted to share the request form that we developed, or if we had time for that, or if you thought that was appropriate.
Do I have that?
I shared it with you in the Google Drive.
It's in the folder?
No, I couldn't do that because it's like a form. I can pull it up, but I sent you an email and shared the link with you.
Okay, let me see. I have two computers going at the same time.
Oh, basically what I'm asking her and what we've developed with the help of Rusty, who, let me just tell you, is worth his weight in gold. Rusty Gregory, our data coordinator. He has helped us develop a request form, which we'll be launching with the admin team tomorrow. It'll basically compile requests that will be tied to different strategies, and then funding sources of ESSER 1, 2, or 3 that will be, administration will fill out very quickly with what their request might be to utilize ESSER funds, the strategies that would be tied to, and then it would be reviewed by the whole admin team. But what it does for me on my side, and Kosha and Julie, is compile all that information automatically into a spreadsheet in one place. Even has bar graphs and everything, so we don't lose track of anything. This will be a tricky puzzle to solve as the years go by in the next 3 years, and so it will really help us in doing that. So it was a great tool. I can't even tell you how thankful I am to have somebody like Rusty helping with that kind of thing. I think Kosha feels the same.
Here it is, everybody. So it actually will be easy to fill out and then go right into a spreadsheet so that it will help us track and sort and hope the different funds and strategies that they fall under.
Thank you.
Toby, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I just would, and this is more for our facilities group, and I'm just going to say it because I've been reading on the state DOE a lot about the ESSER funding, and I know it's not as wide open as it can be, or what most people think, but there's also a lot of chatter about that this is once in a lifetime opportunity for money. And the last time we had that opportunity was, 50 years ago with MVU or more. So I know our facility people had told us about the MVSD at Highgate and the white building. I'm quite sure the air quality in that white building is not healthy, especially with things like virus. So all I'm saying is I think we have to think bold and not be afraid to push the envelope, because I can guarantee there's going to be school districts in Chittenden County that are going to push the envelope. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to miss an opportunity when our needs are much greater than 90% of the school districts in Chittenden County. So I just am putting that out there. It's more for our facility board members. I think they know it. I just think I don't think we can just let this opportunity go by without pushing the envelope as far as possibilities. So that's all I wanted to say.
I appreciate that, Toby, because we can't, I mean, to be transparent, you can't spend $12 million on, short-term intervention and professional development and some laptops. It's just not feasible or effective or what we want to do. But, having one of the things that we made sure that we put into our needs assessment was data about making sure that our school environments were healthy places for students to learn. And we're also talking a lot about, in terms of student engagement, about other options for students, so that we can then, once we have an assessment from EEI that really talks about our building needs, and we look at, they haven't developed all the hoops we have to jump through with this 4-step. Every time Laura has a meeting, there's another step to what they have to do. But that's part of the beauty of working with a company like EEI, is that they will understand those steps well and work with facility committee and the board and administration on how to maximize and what projects would fit, right? And what projects make sense and where we can be creative. But yeah, we definitely made sure that our needs assessment had referenced the needs for facilities in it so that we have that door open.
I would just say space improves air quality, and
Yes.
I've been at MVU when there's a theater trying to go on and kids running around on the winter track team running around the theater. So you've got sweat in the air, you've got air quality issues because we don't have the space. Our kids do not have the facilities that are equitable to other facilities, especially at the middle and high school level. And we also have the white building issue in Highgate. So I trust you're all working with that what you can, but I'm not afraid as a board member to push the envelope because I just know there's going to be schools in wealthier positions that are going to be doing that.
And we're actually pretty lucky. We are receiving quite a bit of funding compared to some other schools. So, we do have to be pretty careful. And that's why we want to make sure that people are being very strategic. As somebody said to me today, we were having a meeting about truancy and what we could do collaboratively together. And the conversation, one of the other superintendents said, we need to slow down so we can move forward efficiently with this. We can't just rush headlong because we have to slow down so we can be very thoughtful, because this is going to be a short-term opportunity that we won't see again for quite a while, I'm sure.
I can tell you, Toby, also, when I shared at our VASBO meeting the last one that they had almost a week ago or so now, that where we were with our performance contracting process and that we've already had multiple engineers, spatial specialists, architects in our buildings reviewing everyone, all the rest of the business managers were envious that they weren't at that point in the process, except for the very few that had engaged in something similar, because we will be ahead, even though we're having to put the brakes on a little bit for this summer so that we can be very thoughtful. Most of them have not even started that process, and they want to use the money effectively as well. But I really feel great about where we are as MVSD and the investments we've made with the EEI team so far, because that's exactly the kind of stuff that they're looking at. And they are spatial specialists and architects and engineers. And, that's something I'm not, and our facility directors are great, but they're not engineers and architects either. So it's just, I feel really great about the information that we're going to get to be able to advise us moving forward. And we're ahead compared to a lot of other school districts.
Don, you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Laura, for the comment. I clicked it. I was going to say to Toby, I think some of it was fate, but we've been talking about a facilities committee for a couple of years. We finally got it off the ground. And then Laura brought to us about performance, the whole performance contracting. We had a lot of meetings. If you talk with Peter and Chris, we met, seemed like weekly for a while. And I think it's going to pay off. I talk with a few school districts, not certainly as many as Laura does, but that was a really critical move on our part. I'd like to say it was intentional, and I think it was somewhat, but I think we started out as a facilities committee saying we need to do something about our building. And I think that's going to put us in a really good place now this money's coming down. So we don't have all the answers, but personally, having done school construction for 40 years, I feel we're in a great place right now. And input, Laura's got us set up for next week, is it? With EEI.
10th.
And 10th, and a couple weeks. And I think, again, that's going to be critical. I see some information coming out of there. It's going to help us develop our multi-year plan. So stay tuned. And I guess other board members, I guess we're meeting in person, right, Laura? We're meeting in person.
Yes.
So we probably have to limit it, but certainly coming out of that, there should be some really good information.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you for the presentation and a lot more to come. Let's see. Next, we're moving on to new business. And first up under new business is new teacher hires.
It would help if I could unmute myself. Bonnie is joining us as well. I'm going to share. You have in your folder the list of the new teachers. I have had, it's only going to get busier as soon as Swant gets all those interviews under their belt. But we have a number of new teachers that we're ready to move forward. I always love meeting with them. It's the best part of the day. Yeah. Let's see if this is it. Are you seeing the table?
Julie, you're way too funny.
What did I put up there?
It was just really, really small, I think, is why he's
Fair.
We'll try again. Oh, you know,
You-
Steve, you made me.
You crack me up.
Here we go.
Or not.
There, can you see that?
There it comes.
So we have a new special educator at MVU, an interventionist in Franklin, tech integration specialist that is a veteran teacher. So she doesn't need new approval, but we put her on the list for you to see. Kathy Rulo is .2 at Franklin, personalized learning teacher that I met with yesterday for MVU. Math teacher I'm meeting with tomorrow, so that'll be next week. But the middle school guidance counselor today, I met with today. I've never met such an excited teacher. It was great. So those are the new folks that we have ready. If I show you the next page, you'll see how many others we have to move forward with in the upcoming weeks or so.
Okay. Okay, at this time,
Am I on twice?
Yes, Don, I think you have 2 sessions open.
Yeah, I got bumped off about 10 minutes ago. My computer went down.
Don, I can remove one of you. Don't do a thing. Okay, you should be okay now.
Thank you. About, I don't know, 5-8 minutes ago, I lost my whole signal. My computer went boom, and it was gone. I had to go back in, but apparently it didn't disconnect. Julie, a question, and maybe you don't want to do it in public, but one of the new positions was the personal learning person at MVU, which I thought was a great idea. I'm just curious as to the background. Is it a former teacher? Is it a...
She is a teacher. She'll be working under a teaching license because she'll be teaching middle school and 9th grade students, and then she'll be consulting and case managing and working with students as they go through the upper grades. She's very excited about this work and really wants to see her work help kids realize their own future and see the connection between their classes and the experiences and maybe flexible pathway opportunities for them and their after high school life experience, whether it's college or other work opportunities. So she's very excited, and she's an MVU graduate. And one of the stories she tells is when she did teach here before and she left to move away and then is coming back. Her students at MVU used to say, well, you couldn't have gone to school here. You know, you've got a master's degree and you've got this. And she really talked about the importance of modeling the future with students. And she was very passionate about it. I was very excited to meet her.
That's great. It would be great at some point during the year to get an update from her, because when we wrote that legislation, I don't know, 6 or 8 years ago, the idea was it would be somebody who truly understood what it was like
Mm-hmm.
both as a student and a teacher, and not just some position that they had there to record data and kind of keep track of who did what. So that's great. Thank you.
And we're excited about it.
Okay, so at this time, I'd entertain a motion to allow the board chair or vice chair to sign the new teacher contracts. Don's the first. Jen's the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of allowing the board chair or vice chair to sign the new hire teacher contracts, raise your hand. Motion carries 9-0. Okay, next up under new business is the SPC copier lease agreement.
Okay, I'm going to present, if that's okay, Chris.
Yes.
Okay, can you see a comparison here with some highlighted yellow font?
Yes.
Okay, so basically this is a summary. If you remember a few meetings ago, the board approved us moving forward as part of a bid process with SPC, who's sort of our third-party administrator for copier and maintenance costs throughout our schools. They did that. The process lasted about a month and a half. They have been communicating quite frequently with Robert and myself. We've met with them a couple of times, and basically this is a comparison that they provided for us of the results of that bid process and what that would mean for MVSD. So we are currently in the last year of our contract with them of a 5-year contract, and we would be proposing a new 5-year contract. If you're looking through, I'll just kind of highlight the important pieces. We did review all of the equipment that we have. So they visited the schools, they talked with administration and Robert and tech folks, and total number of units would be going from 107 down to 97. They'd be closing out 10 units, which is good. We also would be streamlining a few other units that were off network that would now be on network. So we would not be, purchasing toner through Amazon or something like that. It would be part of our maintenance costs, where the per copy cost is much less. Overall description of equipment, if you notice that, presently we actually have 3 manufacturers with 23 different models throughout our schools. The new agreement would shift us to 1 manufacturer with 1 vendor. Not to say that we had problems before. I think we started off a little rocky with our beginning of our contract, but then things worked out quite nicely. But it would be nice to have 1 vendor, 1 manufacturer. We currently lease, our current municipal lease, which is how we fund this type of contract, is going to be paid off on August 1st, 2021. The new agreement would begin the following August 1st, 2022. The new lease amount or rate would be 3.29%. The old rate, I asked him today, was 3.04. That being said, we do have units that we're buying, a reduction in the cost of the units due to the volume and just the cost of these types of machines coming down. And then under service and supplies, you'll notice that the black and color copy costs are both going down pretty significantly as well. So then if we look at the vendor package, you'll really see kind of what that means for MVSD as a whole. And so totals, if we take it, service and supplies for color, black and white, the municipal lease, and then the upgrades for the own devices that we have, we'll be having a savings of about $32,000 annually in year 2, about $27,000 in year 1. So new equipment, lower per unit costs, lower copier costs, which would mean lower maintenance costs, and so we would lower lease payment as well. So there'll be a savings with all new equipment, basically, is what this would mean over the next 5 years. So I did want you to note here that this is based on 5.8 million copies a year throughout all of our schools, including and central office. We pay based on that estimated copy cost at the beginning of the year and throughout the year, and then there's a reconciliation the following year. So I would say that this copy estimation is actually high, and so we would hope that if anything, our maintenance costs would come down. And then I just wanted to share, oops. I have an actual motion that I'd like the board to consider if that is agreeable to you, and after I answer any questions that you might have. I also shared an amortization schedule in the folder, shared folder as well. But what I would need from the board, if that is agreeable, is this motion to approve engaging in a 5-year lease with SPC in the amount and at the rate of 3.29 here that you can see that would expire in August 1st of 2026. So I will stop sharing.
All right, Julie. Can we legally do 5 years?
We can with a lease that holds a non-appropriation clause, yes. We cannot engage in a loan that does not have a non-appropriation clause, but that's why people engage in municipal leases.
Okay, the other thing is, I thought I read in the beginning, it looks like a really great deal, but I read the annual increase would be CPI of 5%. Is that true? It says 5% or CPI, whichever was lower, or now is it fixed at 3.29?
That increase is already built into the payment that they're estimating.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can tell you that, and I know Steve had asked this question before, and I can actually provide you with the information. I didn't share it with you tonight. I have it in my office, but the per unit cost of what they're paying for these units is between $2,000 and $5,000. If we were to go buy them, we were to go buy a machine, they'd be in the $12,000 to $15,000 to $20,000 range. So just their capability and their buying power, because they're buying, for all of New England or a portion of New England, is just something we would never be able to achieve on our own.
Laura, you do a great job. I understand that, but I want to talk to Terry and Devin about it. I mean, do you guys want to get into a 5-year contract? I don't at work.
Did we receive any other qualified bids?
We a couple of meetings ago approved allowing us to participate in their bid process. So yes, they solicited, I believe, 7 different bids. The lowest was actually not considered being a qualified bid. It was a smaller company. They were just concerned for a few different reasons, and they shared those reasons with us. And Robert and I agreed that probably was not something that we wanted to take a risk on. And so this was the second lowest bid. But I think not all of their bidders, and I can provide you with that information, not all of the companies bid on all the school districts or municipalities that they're asking to, but MVSD received at least 5 qualified bids, 5 bids that were considered qualified through SPC. And that information was all shared with us.
So I guess, Steve, to answer your question, I think if this were a smaller corporation we were entering into this agreement with, then I may be concerned about the duration.
Okay.
SimQuest is enormous and they're not going anywhere, and likely, I mean, with the price difference we see with this one compared to some of the others, I think we'd be competitive even if we run into that 5%. I don't love the 5%. I'd love to be capped out at 3 or 4, but that's the only piece I don't love.
Yeah.
Okay. No, totally open. Just throwing it out there. That's all.
I would say just logistically also there is a consideration. I know I talked with you about that before, yanking all the machines out of the school, training all the staff. I mean, it's something it's difficult to do in a school. I know.
No, I get it.
Just smiling.
I get it. Same deal. I get it. So, Devin, I agree. And Terry, I hope you're okay. Okay. All right. Go for
Thank you, though, Steve.
it. Whatever.
No, that was a sincere thank you.
So Laura, can you post that motion I'm supposed to read again?
Hold on. Sorry, I wanted to unmute myself. Can you see it, Chris?
You make it a little bigger.
Go there.
That's better. Okay.
There.
Okay, the superintendent of schools is authorized to execute and deliver the tax-exempt lease purchase agreement with MST Governing Leasing, LLC, in the name and on behalf of the Mississquoi Valley School District, the leaser, or the issuer, for the purpose of refunding and refinancing existing lease purchases of photocopier equipment and lease purchasing additional new and reconditioned photocopier equipment, any service agreement specifically financed in connection with certain equipment, consulting fees, and related costs of issuance with an aggregate purchase price not exceeding $263,116.44 at a rate of interest of not more than 3.29% per year through August 1st, 2026, and otherwise in such form as the superintendent may approve, and that the appropriate officials of the issuer be and hereby are authorized to execute and deliver on behalf of the issuer such other documents and certificates such as may be required in connection with such tax-exempt lease purchase agreement, and that no part of proceeds of said tax-exempt lease purchase agreement shall be used directly or indirectly to acquire more securities or obligations, the acquisition of which would cause the tax-exempt lease purchase agreement to be a private activity bond or an
Arbitrage
bond with the meaning of sections 141 and 148 respectively of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as amended the code. And that the tax-exempt lease purchase agreement issued pursuant hereto be designed as a qualified tax-exempt obligation within the meaning of section 265B3 of said code, and that the superintendent be and hereby is authorized to can't read it, it's too small.
No. Coming in.
Oh, there we go. Covent in behalf of the issuer to file any information report and pay any rebate due to the United States in connection with the issuance of said tax-exempt lease purchase agreement, and to take all other lawful actions necessary to ensure that the interest portion of the rental payments under and pursuant to the tax-exempt lease purchase agreement will be excluded from the gross income of the owners thereof for purposes of federal income taxation, and to refrain from taking any action which would cause such interest portion of the rental payments to become includable in the gross income of owners thereof. The school board of the issuer also authorizes the superintendent of schools of the school district to sign the attached contract with Specialized Purchasing Consultants, Inc. relating to acquisition of photocopying equipment for the issuer and authorizes such persons to make any elections under the contract not exceeding the aggregate purchase price of this authorizing vote. Wow. I hope I don't have to read that again.
I apologize for that pain.
So, as I read that motion, somebody want to be a first for that one? Devin's a first, Terry's a second. Any discussion?
I think we should read it again.
Have at it, Toby. It's all you.
I thank you.
I move. I approve Toby's motion. I missed, I think, the 14th and 15th lines, and
It's way too much. Look, thank you for your help, and Terry and Devin, thanks for your input. I appreciate it. I'm all for it.
Oh, life was so much simpler 50 years ago. The guy came in on the demo. The teacher stood around and said, we like it. We signed a piece of paper, and he didn't see him for 3 years.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Tom.
Man, I don't think there's that much paperwork when I bought my house. So all those in favor of accepting the motion as read, please raise your hand.
Yes, yes, yes. I lost you guys.
Motion carries 9-0.
Yeah.
Okay. Next under new business is the Swant Library Trust Fund CD maturity enroll.
Okay, this should be a little quicker. I just wanted to make the board aware that some of you might already recall that Mrs. Babcock in Swanton had left some funds, about $16,977 when she had passed away in a trust, and it was for the purpose. The principal needed to stay in a trust fund, but the interest was to support the library in Swanton as possible. Interest rates are just not great on that amount of money. And so it's a wonderful gift, but we've been allowing that interest to build up just until it becomes to an amount that would be sufficient to actually purchase something real. And so we did initially put it into a 5-year CD that the board had approved with People's Trust Company. We moved that to People's United and put it into a 12-month CD. I've allowed that CD to automatically renew. It renewed on the 8th of April. And so I was just making you aware that that was the case. There was less than $50 this year that was in interest. And so overall, we're around the $1,500 mark for interest that would be accrued, and maybe gaining on something that might be substantial enough to utilize for something meaningful. And so I just wanted to make you aware that's still with People's United Bank for the next 12 months.
Laura, can we put it in the stock market?
We're not allowed to do that.
That would be probably 5,000 by now.
Yeah, maybe. What I would like to do, and what I'm talking to the auditors about, and they're looking into for me, they actually have been for the last few months, is if we can roll some of these CDs together so we can track the funds separately and make sure that they're using them appropriately. But if I could wrap maybe the 5 trusts that we have into one 5-year CD, then perhaps I could attract a better rate, and then we'd have it. So but it's not quite that simple. And so they're looking into that for us, and I would bring that to the board if that's possible.
I have a kind of a related question. So we don't have to go way off on it. I don't want to waste anybody's time, but I'm kind of curious on these trusts. Like how does the state look at those as far as equity? Because I'm sure there's some schools that have much more trusts than others. So does the state ever look into how that's equitable across all the school systems?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, it's the funds are audited and part of your trial balance and your financial statements, but I guess they don't really bring us any additional, it's no value that is, no equity counted as far as the state to make things.
No, I'm saying like there's probably some schools that have been the beneficiary of trusts forever. And there's some schools that were never the beneficiary of any trusts. And I'm just wondering how that makes things equitable, gives all kids the same experience across Vermont. So I'm just that.
Yeah, I don't believe that it's taken into account at all as far as.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Toby,
Yeah.
go over to St. Johnsbury Academy and see if they'll tell you what they're
Right. Yeah, exactly. Or even BFA. you
Yeah.
know, you only need to go 10 miles down the road. So, okay, thanks.
It's an excellent point, though.
Yeah. Honestly, you know, we used to have very good interest on some of the trusts that we had. They would make thousands of dollars a year, you know, 20 years ago when interest rates were much better. Now it's just not the case. And so it becomes kind of a cumbersome process, to be honest with you, but still a very nice gesture.
Okay. I believe that's it for that one. I don't see any more hands raised. So at this time, we'll move on to the audit contract extension, which we'll need some action for.
Okay, so we currently have our auditing contract with RHR Smith and Company. We've been working with them we had an original 3-year contract. Last year, I came to you and asked to extend for 1 year with a minimum increase. They have proposed to us extending that again for a year at no increase charge to us. I would like to advocate for that again. There are other auditing firms that we could work with. To be honest, we're still working through a lot of issues given the merger, the audit that they're currently working on, a draft for us. It has been delayed. Everyone was delayed across the state due to COVID and all the new regulations with all the federal funding coming. But you add into that the fact that we were an Act 46 merger of multiple school districts. We're $40 million large, and that we have a new chart of accounts and all of that to go with it. I would just like to advocate that we're allowed to extend 1 more year and keep the pricing flat, just to alleviate any additional stress on the business office and having another learning curve of working with a new auditing firm for another year.
So moved.
So Don's a first. Jen's a second. Any discussion? Toby.
No, I had no discussion. I'm good. I was seconding. That was my hand.
Oh, okay. So hearing notice.
I had Chris, could I ask a question?
Yep, go for it, Devin.
I was just curious, Laura, how long have we had this particular audit firm?
So our original contract was 3 years, and then we extended last year. So that was for the auditing year of fiscal year 20, and this would be for auditing year fiscal year 21, a 1 year extension. So it would be a total of 5 years after fiscal year 21 was done being audited.
And have they changed the audit manager for us, or have we had the same one?
The last 2 years we've had, well, I would say the last 2 years. Currently, we're through our second year with Miranda, is her name. She was actually the business manager for CVU. And so we are very much enjoying working with her just because she has both sides of the experience. She knows what we're really dealing with as school districts and the everyday operations and functions, but then she's also a CPA. And so I would say we've been much happier dealing with Miranda than we were in the beginning prior to having that experience.
Do they have like a regular schedule for how many years they'll have the same person manage an account versus switching to a different audit manager within their firm?
I honestly don't know the answer to that. I know that they are growing significantly. To be honest, they've hired 6 business managers out of school districts to work for them just this year alone, given their volume. They're growing. So I can ask that question. Devin, I did not, as far as, the time frame that she would be working with us.
Sure. All right. Thanks. Yeah. And just the reasoning there is just because you don't want too much familiarity between the auditors and the clients in general. So staying with a firm for a long time sometimes is the question, and but they get around that by putting a different audit manager in charge of an account and just rotating every so often. So I just want to make sure we're doing that if we keep extending.
Sure, and I can tell you that we do work with multiple people. They have quite a system built, so we have kind of quality control people that we work through on fixed assets, people that help us reconcile. So she's our manager, she's the one that comes on site, but there are many people involved in the process that we report to.
Yeah, all right, thanks.
But I understand what you're saying.
Chris?
Don?
Yeah. Devin, you raised a really good point, and I think as we go forward the next year, we may have to look at it. The only thing I would say is the feedback we've gotten that this is a really good firm. And, the number of firms, I think back even a decade ago, has been greatly reduced. So, in the old days, we would say probably at 5 years, that was a max. We went and got a different auditing firm. But I'm not even sure that's a viable option anymore, because some of the better ones, Angolano was supposed to be one of the better ones in the state. They went out of business, right, Laura?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Last time we went out, we only received 2.
So I think it's something we're going to have to take some time to look at. But Devin, you raised some really good points. You need to strike a balance. But if there's nobody else out there, the way they're going right now, I don't know what we're going to do. But rotating internally probably is the option. Thank you.
Are we ready to vote? Appears to be. So all those in favor of granting the contract extension, raise your hand. Motion carries 9-0. And that concludes new business. We'll move on to old business. And first up under old business is the Superintendent Evaluation Committee. Which I'm going to lean on Terry a little bit, to be honest with you. I was kind of on vacation last week, so I'm not really sure where we're at with that. I think we need one more week to be really ready to roll it out. But
I think, if you don't mind, I noticed it's on the agenda twice. Is there a difference between the committee, which would be you and Devin, versus the task force, which would include Jen and me, and the process?
I just messed it up.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe there was a differentiation that we were doing.
Nope, I just deleted it on my version.
No,
Yeah.
Chris, I'd be happy to share what we came up with if you want me to, or we can just wait.
no, that's great.
That'd be okay?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just find it here real quick. Yikes. Okay, sorry, folks. Oh, wow. Okay, good. I can't believe this is not my normal style to be able to find something right away. All right, so I got to share if I can. I don't know how to, is it present now? Is that what this is for share? Okay, thank you. Uh-oh. A window. Let's see. Oh, it's working. Okay. Let's see if this will share. Can you all see that? You want it bigger? Do you want it bigger?
Good. That's great.
Okay, so here we go. So we had 2 options. We were talking about doing a 1-year review or a 2-year review. And so I think we're leaning towards the 1-year review since Chris and I last talked, which is this. And what we're doing here is this table just kind of lays out what it would look like. And if I could back up for a minute, you all have already approved the mechanism that would, not the mechanism, but the form that we'll use. And so this is really the process. And so we were talking about in February, gather input from the board members, which would be probably towards the end of February, so that we didn't lose board members that were going off. March, have a discuss the evaluation with board members in executive session, probably one of the earlier meetings. March, the same thing, have the vice chair and the chair conduct a formal performance review of past year's performance with the superintendent and begin setting goals for upcoming year. And the discussion is documented with that appropriate form that we already talked about. Then in the summer, at board retreat, the board develops and agrees on board and district goals. And board discusses September, board discusses 6-month check-in, because we wanted to have a 6-month check-in is what we decided, in executive session in September or at summer retreat, depending on the timing of the retreat. And then September, again, this would be the 6-month check-in with the superintendent. And then February, you'd begin the process all over again. So the goals, we've talked about this, we got to get a little more specific, and kind of this is one of those things where we're going to have to do probably a run to see how it works in terms of when we set board, district, and superintendent. But it makes sense that superintendent goals would be set during the review, and hopefully those district ones would come maybe at the 6th month, and because it's going to take more than a year to do some of them, so it's more check-in. I don't know, do you want me to go through option number 2, Chris, or do you want to just recommend one, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, we can say option 2 just to see if there's some strong feelings one way or the other.
Okay, so option 2 would be a formal review every 2 years, because we do renew the superintendent contract every 2 years, and then there'd be 6-month check-ins in between. So in this example, the renew years are 2021 and 2023. So I'm sorry to go through it, but I will just go through it all. So February, again, gathering input, which we should have done, which we will catch up. Then in March, we would have discussed the evaluation with board members in executive session. So we're only a month late. And then March 2021, the vice chair and chair would conduct that formal performance review of the past 2 years' performance with the superintendent and begin setting goals for upcoming years. And then discussion is documented with appropriate form, kind of like the past one, right? And then summer of 2021 to September of 2021, at board retreat, the board agrees on board and district goals. This could be refining, changing, adding, etc. The board discusses 6-month check-in in executive session in September or at summer retreat, depending on timing of retreat again. So you can see September, the chair and vice chair conduct the 6-month review, and then informal notes to be used at formal review in March of 2023 as part of the formal thing. But obviously they'll be used in March of 2022 as part of a check-in too, since it'll be data. And then February 2022, board discusses 6-month check-in, gives feedback. March 2022, since this is where we split, because this would be less formal, is the big difference. That would be another 6-month check-in and informal notes to be used. And then we repeat the process in September and summer, which would be that 6-month again. And then in February of 2023 would be gathering the input for the formal review. March 2023, discuss evaluation with board members in executive session, and the vice chair and chair conduct the formal performance review of past 2 years' performance with superintendent and begin setting goals for upcoming years. And discussion is documented with the appropriate form. So, we're not really sure which, it's going to be a lot of the same amount of work, but not quite, because when something's informal, it's more forgiving. But maybe more forgiving isn't a good thing. I don't know. That's kind of where we were leaving it. I'm going to turn it back over to Chris. I'll stop sharing if I can figure it out how. Oh, stop sharing. There
I know personally I was leaning more towards the 1 year, just to keep it a little more formal, a little more structured. And this is more me personally, but if I do it every year, I'm more apt to remember and follow the procedures and do everything the correct way than if it's every other year. I mean, that was a lot of my rationale for pushing towards the 1 year instead of doing it every other year.
I think those are great rationales personally. You're going to be doing the work anyway. It's just this holds you to making sure you really do it.
Right.
With the 1 year.
So the other thing that we'd discussed is we would obviously have a form that we would send out to board members. Normally this would happen in, probably the end of January, so you'd have time to go over it in February. This year will be a little later, but and then we'll have an executive session where we all can discuss and kind of basically compile the forms. If you pre-fill out the forms, they'll get sent to, I believe we decided that the vice chair would handle that, and just compile and summarize the forms more or less. And then at the executive session, we can maybe streamline it a little bit, have a real quick presentation of the summarization, and then be able to have some individual input. And then from that, the vice chair and the chair would meet and then set up a meeting with the superintendent to do a formal evaluation.
That's good, Chris. I'm going to add that to that chart, the 1-year chart.
Don, you just raised your hand.
I don't know how much time you want to spend on this tonight, but I asked a question, I think a month or two ago. Julie, in statute, when do superintendents need to be notified that they're renewed or non-renewed?
I'm muted. I think it's May. Pierrette found it in statute, and I had her send that to Chris, so he would know. I think it's in May.
I believe it is in May. Pierrette did send that to me. Yes.
Okay, because I personally thought it was earlier than that. I have no problem with 1 or 2, but that was my big concern because I remember it used to be earlier because right now is a good time to do this because we have a superintendent everybody feels very good about. But you have to be careful when you're doing it during good times because you go, oh, Julie's doing a great job and she did a great job before the pandemic. Let's just, and then something happens and Julie moves on, retires or whatever, and you got some stuff in there and the next superintendent isn't that good. And you got, oh, are we in a bad position? Because you don't want to be hiring a superintendent in May and June. So if you had to replace somebody because they said, hey, I didn't have to let you know, so I candidated and I just got this $25,000 raise and it's now May. So if the date is May, I have no problem with it. But that as I followed it, that was my concern. Sometimes in good times, you make decisions. I remember when school boards used to give benefits. Oh, yeah, let's give them dental insurance and life insurance and the JY health insurance so we can save on salary. And 20 years later, they were yelling, why do we give that? So anyway, thank you for listening. I think the 1 year is good.
Right. That was kind of one of my other concerns is obviously I'm not concerned with Julie, but in next superintendent or one down in the future for the board, maybe every year review, more formalized would be better if we're having issues with a superintendent. That was another factor to it. And then once we get this up and rolling, obviously we would have this done earlier than the year than we are this year. Terry?
I had a question because I'm not quite sure, Don. When you were saying that about May, how does that impact when we do the performance review? I missed something. I'm not understanding.
Well, I would think that you would want to get your performance review done like January or February because you're going to be giving contracts. Are you going to give a contract and then do a performance review? No, you really should have some lead time in there.
So you're saying don't do it in March, do it sooner?
That was what I was thinking, but if May and people are comfortable or not, but see, I used to do superintendent searches in my consulting business. The last one I did was like 2 years ago. And if your superintendent's moving on by his or her choice, however it happens, you don't want to be looking for a superintendent much after March because there aren't a lot of people who want that job, number one. And number two, if you hire somebody, and there are young people coming along that do, you want to be able to get them to make that transition. I mean, I appreciate Chris because even though I've been around a while, I always look to the future because I've had the experiences where people didn't. So that was what I was thinking. But if people are comfortable, I'm going to throw you another curve too. I think with everything we have going on right now, I would bag this year's evaluation. If I asked right now, how many think Julie's doing a good job? Everybody raise a hand. So let's get our act together and start in the fall and go from there.
I actually disagree with you a little bit on that, Don. I do agree Julie's doing a great job, but where I disagree is I would like to go through the process, and the beauty is she is doing a great job. So Devin and I can get our feet going and get our understanding of the process and perfect what we're doing, because Julie's making it easy on us this year.
Okay, and I don't have a problem with that, Chris. If you guys got the time and everything, I'm not opposed to it. But
Well, I'm
It
not
just-
swimming in time, but you know, it's still something needs to be done. So
I would
Well,
just
if we-
say that this year is a good time to do it because I'm in the first year of a 2-year contract. So you'll have, it doesn't matter that we're a little late this first year, but you want to have it so that, that feedback is there for next year before you make a decision. So it's all about the timelines.
Pure.
Just wanted to let you know, I just looked it up. It's May 15th, which I agree with Don. I think that's pretty late, but that's the date that's in the statute.
Okay. I'm sure we'll meet again soon, and we might adjust the timeline a little bit just to move it a little earlier in the year. I don't mind moving it earlier in the year just because then we can get it done before town meeting. We're just trying to balance we don't want to be doing the evaluation during budget either, so we got to find that window in between. But okay, if we're ready, we can move on to Board Goals Committee is the next one.
Joanne, do you mind doing that? Doing the report out?
I don't have a report. We did not meet since
We
because we canceled last week.
with the notes that you took, you've already told that.
Yep.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
We were
That
supposed to meet last week.
yeah.
Yeah, Terry nicely suggested that we wait. And I met with Terry a little bit virtually, and then we're going to meet again on Friday to confirm some of the work we've been doing cleaning up the drive. And I created some survey for the board goals and the district goals so that we can collect data and have the board self-assess how you think we've done with those, so that the board goals committee can then look at that together and have something to be looking at. That's kind of where the behind the scenes work is so far for the board goals committee.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Joanne. I didn't mean to throw you under the bus there thinking, what am I supposed to report out?
She did that last time.
It's one of those things where we're trying to coordinate so many meetings and with a break. And I know that Julie's been flat out too. So it's one of those things where I'll meet with her and then we'll kind of decide as a group if we're going to wait till our next regularly scheduled meeting, if that's okay.
Okay. I was hoping just as a team member, I guess, that we could meet before the end of May, just because it's already been a month. I just feel like time goes by so fast.
It does.
And
That is
before you
true.
know it, it's going to be the end of the school year, and we're not going to, well, we are not going to really know what the, goals are, the plans are. So
We will find a day. Even if we meet without Julie, we'll do it.
yeah, I mean, Kosha is, is
Yeah.
good. Or we could discuss amongst ourselves too with Toby, Devin. The four of us could be on a page,
Okay.
heading in a direction, and then we get some legwork done, even if it's not for an hour, hour and a half, even if it's for an hour. But it would be good for us to regroup.
Okay, let's do that. I'll send out a survey for us. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then next up is the facility committee, which we haven't met since our last board meeting. We're kind of gearing up for the overview of EEI's presentation on May 10th, which I believe is going to be an in-person meeting at MVU. So I'm not sure on attendance, whether we can have extra people or not. It'll depend on space. Depends on space because we will have all the directors there, obviously Laura and Julie, plus the 3 facility committee members.
Yeah, we'll look at that. I mean, technically, we are allowed, the Vermont's forward plan is a little confusing to implement, but in school board meetings, they're hoping for us not to have in-person school board meetings until the state of emergency is over. But this, I think, is an appropriate exception because of the presentation and so forth. So we'll find out what the capacity is, and because if there are other interested board members, I think that would be a nice opportunity for them to see the presentation.
I think we're planning on also doing it remotely, Julie, setting up something so people could participate that way as well.
Yeah, that's good.
Right. Okay. Unless Peter or Dawn have anything to add, or I think that concludes facilities.
Good job, Chris. Good job.
Chris, can I add something about the board committee that I neglected to, if we could do a switchback, sorry. And that is, we did talk at our meeting about having a board retreat. And we talked about when we would schedule that. And the reason I bring that up now is because it is getting close. It's already, like Joanne said, it's going to be the end of May. And if we don't talk to you all about it now, we won't talk to you about it again until, well, it will be May when we talk about it again. So if people could think about a time that could work for them, and maybe we could figure something out and talk about this at our next board meeting.
Actually, Julie and I were talking about it this morning, the board retreat. And one very good option is to trade one of our meetings in, say, July, and have like just start off the board retreat. We can do the, just the check warrants and the monthly stuff we have to get done. And then the rest of the meeting would be the board retreat. But instead of having it at night, maybe we can move it to like early afternoon or something, so we have some more time.
Ah, great.
And then that way people aren't trying to find another day to have another meeting and whatnot. It would already be a regularly scheduled meeting. We'll just trade it for board retreat. And like I said, try to move it a little earlier.
Sounds good.
Okay. Let's see. Next on the agenda, there is no other business. So future meeting dates is, our next one is next Tuesday, May 4th, 6:30, which will also be held virtually. We don't have a need for executive session tonight. Peter.
Thanks, Chris. Before we adjourn, I was just wondering if there was any update on if we're still pursuing in-person learning full-time for high school students.
Dan and the admin team will do a bit of a presentation on Tuesday next week. At this time, we've gone around and around about high school, and it's not actually, no high school in Franklin County at this point is going full-time back in person for high school. We are planning on 7-8 beginning in the upcoming month. So we're extending to 7-8.
What's the difficulty with the high school compared to the other grades?
Well, I'll let them go into it in more detail for you next week, but essentially, because of the way they've created the schedule with the AB schedule in quarters, it's a lot harder to bring the cohorts back. It's more disruptive than it is helpful, and especially for and the juniors and seniors don't want to do it. I probably shouldn't, but it has been a challenge. So at this time, I'd be happy I'd be happy to have somebody follow up with you with more specifics, and then that'll help them present to the board next week.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank
Not
you.
a lot of high schools are doing it at the last few weeks of school.
Terry first, then Toby.
Sorry, I forgot to take my hand down. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Toby.
So just quick feedback, and I've just heard from middle school parents that they aren't happy with the half day coming up on Wednesdays, and I'm sure there's an explanation. I'm not expecting it now. I'm just providing that feedback. back in my last tour school board, it was the same thing. I always hear that parents don't like half days. It's this, you hear it over and over, and I'm sure it's easy for the school because it counts as a day, but parents don't like half days.
Yeah, we discussed that. You're not the only one who heard that feedback, Toby.
Yeah. So I just passing that on because that's the feedback. Yep. And what the heck was the other thing? I think I forgot already. Dawn mentioned it. Were you going to give us? Can you give us any update on end of school stuff? Like, or is that Tuesday too?
I would say that's more Tuesday. Yeah. Yeah, we just got the guidance last week.
Okay.
And we've had preliminary plans, but it's like one non-vaccinated person per 100 square feet through the month of May. And, it's a little tricky to work through. We are hoping to have indoor graduation at MVU. I will say that. Don't know what.
I don't want to mention the word that starts with a P and ends in an M either, but some people are wanting to know about that too.
Yeah, nobody has been able to do that. That takes months and months and months of planning.
Yeah, yep.
So I heard from Mr. Hartman that's a no. Yes, we are no longer we're going to have those half days for practice for 7-8, but we are, I do not believe that the long-term for the rest of the year plan is going to involve half days for 7th and 8th grade. I don't want to preempt what my discussion with them was today, but we're talking full days, not, let me tell you, I heard it in my office about the half day.
Started about 50 years ago. Teachers started with the associations wanting half days, and I would say that I probably heard 5,000 comments on it. But
it's hard. It's hard on families. It just is. No question.
Okay. Unless somebody else has something to add, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Devin's the first. Steve's the second. Any discussion? Great. All those in favor of adjourning at 8:35, raise your hand. Motion carries 9-0. We are adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Dina,
Bye. Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye, everybody.